run.
Look at this, eh?
I'm at the back with all the family, but this is
Good.
Okay. I just said to Steph, no, let's entertain it. I'm not just for fun. It's better to be entertained.
No, you always have advice. No pressure though.
Holy moly, if I had to wear that jacket, I'd spit it down.
Which one? You do what?
If I had to wear that jacket, I'd spit it straight off my back.
We are going to get going shortly, so if you haven't found your seats yet, please make your way to a comfortable seat. We're going to kick off in the next 30 seconds or so. Thank you. Can you read and write Japanese?
Yeah, partly, yeah. So there's three.
Good morning, everybody. Andrew, if you ever thought or ever wondered whether you can draw a crowd, I think you've confirmed this morning, eh? Welcome, everybody. My name is Steph Bester. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, I'm in full-time business, but also involved with leadership here at CityHill. And if you've come through this morning off the back of an invitation from another person, if you don't regularly attend CityHill, a special welcome to you. I trust you're going to enjoy the morning with us. Looking forward to a really special time together. So just by way of giving a bit of a roadmap on how the next hour or so is going to roll out, Andrew's going to come up first, share for approximately 30 minutes. Then we're going to have a short interview section, myself and Andrew working through some questions. And then we're going to have roaming microphones in the audience for the last 15 minutes or so for anybody that wants to ask Andrew some questions. Obviously, we're not going to be able to take a question from every single person, but we will see how many of those we can pack in towards the end of this morning. And then we are looking to close just before 9 or at 9 o'clock sharp so everybody can get to their normal business day. If I can ask you at this stage just to check that your phone is on silent. No, there's some important phone calls that are going to come through between 8 and 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. Thank you. Then a special welcome to Andrew and Cindy Kirby here this morning. We're really looking forward to hearing from you. We'll do a more formal introduction in a minute or so. Can I just check here, who in the audience drives a Toyota? Okay, so everybody else, we've got babies' rooms and littlies' rooms and mothers' rooms. I went through to Andrew's house a few weeks ago to discuss the flow of this morning, and I was so grateful that I could drive into his driveway with a Toyota, because it would have been quite awkward if I arrived in another car. In fact, I think I would have borrowed a Toyota just for that moment. So as all of you know, Andrew is the CEO and president of Toyota. And in addition to what I can only imagine is very, very demanding day-to-day responsibilities, Andrew also plays a key role in shaping the future of the automotive and manufacturing industry across government, across business, labor, and manufacturing. Last year, Andrew chaired a task force that was part of the B20, Business 20 forum that sat inside of the G20 forum, which most of you will know. And also, right now, Andrew is a CEO sponsor inside of the B4SA, which is a government-private business initiative, and it looks across 3 different areas. It looks across electricity, Crime and Corruption, and Transport and Logistics. Have I got it right? And Andrew is a key player and heads up as CEO sponsor for Transport and Logistics. But in addition to success, influence, big responsibilities, when you meet the man, you meet someone that is incredibly humble, incredibly strong, and has a deep conviction and sense of his own personal faith. So Andrew, we look forward to hearing from you this morning. Won't you join me in the front? Let's give Andrew a big warm welcome. So before I hand over to you formally, I checked with Andrew beforehand whether he can read and write Japanese. So we've got a slide there for you, Andrew.
That's very easy.
Is that? Yeah, well, I'm sure. On the left-hand side is Andrew's new big boss. That's the name of Andrew's new big boss of Toyota. And I thought to myself, when I saw it in English, the name did not look as intimidating. But when I saw it in Japanese, I thought, man, I wouldn't want to report to someone whose name's written like that. Hey? So you recognize the name on the left?
And it's actually very short. His surname is Kon, K-O-N.
Yeah.
So it's quite a lot of characters for 3 letters.
Can you believe it, eh? And then Andrew on the right there, we've put together a special slide for you that says, Man of Deep Faith and Conviction, Andrew Kirby. Welcome. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Steph, and really nice to have this opportunity to share a little bit about some of my journey over the last 10 years. And yeah, wonderful to have so many of my friends here this morning. I see some colleagues from work, so that's really good. And very nice to have my wife, Cindy, with me. You'll understand a little bit later as I tell my story why. She's been a very important part in supporting me as I've gone through these different challenges. Prayer warrior often gives me a lot of wisdom and obviously an important sounding board, and that'll be quite relevant when I share some of the things that have happened. So let me kick right into it and just give you a little bit of a taste of what we do as a company, and just to give you a bit of context, because some of the story will then become a lot more relevant. So we have our production operations in the Durban South near the old airport, just under 90 hectares, and that's where most of our employment base is. We have a head office in Sandton, responsible for sales and marketing, corporate affairs, legal, etc. And we have a parts warehouse just near the airport in Johannesburg that provides parts all over the country, but also exports into Africa. Our main economic contribution to South Africa is the manufacturing base. That's about 60-70% of our economic contribution to KwaZulu-Natal, to the country, and obviously that's where most of our employment is. The real multiplier in terms of how it's supporting the economy is in our component supply base, tier 1s, then tier 2s and 3s. So you can imagine that's a couple of hundred suppliers that are all supplying component parts into our production process. We build the cars, we import vehicles, and then we supply through our dealer network to South Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, and Namibia. So that's our area of responsibility. And you'll see why the manufacturing hub is so important, because we export more than 50% of our production, mostly to Western Europe, and then the rest of Africa, a little bit into Latin America, and then obviously supplying the local content. So it's a really integrated business, and of course all of these parts need to work and fit together for us to have a viable, competitive operation. So I had the fortune, after coming back, we lived in Japan for 2.5 years as a family, came back here for a few years, and then in April of 2016 I was appointed as president and CEO. I really had big shoes to fill. My predecessor was a renowned individual in the automotive industry, but also within leadership circles in South Africa, very strong connection with government, went on to run all of Europe for us. His name was Dr. Johan van Zyl, and I knew I was really having to step into some big shoes. He'd been there for 14 years. He took over from the son of the founder of Toyota South Africa, so a lot of history there. And I was a very different type of leader. And I knew at the time that We were just starting the production of a new vehicle. It was the Hilux at the time. We had some sales and production challenges. We were also going into a once every 3-year labor negotiation cycle. And obviously, as Toyota, we play a big part in those negotiations. And I also knew the team had been a little bit disjointed, and my appointment, I needed to unify everyone. So I stepped into that role. 2 months later, I decided we were going to go up to Lesotho, and I took my family snow skiing. 2 younger kids, my wife was with me, my eldest couldn't join us, and we thought that would be a nice long weekend away. Unfortunately, I tried to keep up with my 2 younger children. We went into a snow park on snowboards, and I did one of those jumps, and I landed on my back and broke my back. So I ended up not being able to sit for 2 months. I certainly couldn't go into work. Fortunately, we were able to hire an electric bed that could move me from horizontal to partially standing up. And in the beginning, the first few weeks, I had no energy. I couldn't attend any meetings. IT department came along and set up a video conferencing setup for me. And slowly but surely, I was able to interact with everyone. But I wasn't present, wasn't able to go into the office, wasn't able to travel to our Sandton branch. And I knew this is not a great way to start a new job. You all know how the first 100 days were really important. How was I going to pull this all together? And I could already sense on some of the video conference meetings, some of the conflicts starting to arise. And it was a humbling time for me. Just the year before, I'd done a half Ironman. I prided myself on keeping myself fairly fit, and there I was having a double fusion on my back. Lord, what are you doing? And God spoke to me very, very directly and simply said, Andrew, you are not in charge. So a very, very tough time for me. And of course, I know spiritually that I need to rely on God, that I'm completely dependent on His influence, but it was a very, very strong and personal message to me. I can't control how exchange rates are going to fluctuate. I couldn't control how the international markets were going to change. I couldn't control how some of the labor government issues were happening in South Africa. And of course, we have a very complex environment. And that was a very, very important time for me just to continuously remind myself, I'm not in charge. Absolutely, God's in charge. I don't know if I learned my lesson, because what was then going to unfold was a series of events. The first one happened in 2018. I don't know if you remember, we had a small flash flood in Amanzimtoti. Over 100 millimeters of rain came down. I was in our production facility at the time. We had water coming up through the storm drains. We had gutters and water systems that were not able to cope with the flood. And we were in a small crisis. I contacted my boss at the time in Japan. He contacted the president of Toyota globally, Akio Toyota, and the message came back to me, said, Andrew, don't worry, we're behind you, but I want you to make sure that you prioritize looking after your people, their safety, then focus on the communities around you, and only after that, focus on recovering your operations. I don't know how many multinational CEOs would give that direction, but I wish I'd come up with that. And of course, he's not a Christian, but it was so, it just really resounded with what I thought was the right value system. So we created that framework, we communicated. Obviously, we contacted all our employees. We then found out that some of their houses had been structurally damaged. We put a program together to rebuild and help them with restoring that, and went into the schools around us. A lot of the local schools have been damaged. We had a program of supporting them. At the same time, we recovered our operations. So it took us about 8 days. Of course, after that was the, just want to make sure I'm ahead. Okay, was the COVID environment, and obviously very challenging for all of us. Massive challenge from a production point of view, sales point of view, and just our sustainability from a cash flow point of view. But we used the same framework. This time it wasn't just about safety, it was about health. went into the communities around us, make sure that we were in contact with roughly 10,000 employees doing the traceability. We had our own vaccination program, spreading a lot of material to help everyone, and of course, help the Department of Health in KZN and had various outreach programs. And then, of course, we had the riots in 21. I think that was a really tough time for many people who were close to that, and obviously scarred a lot of people emotionally. But we flowed through with the same set of principles. So we became a lot more human-centered, a lot more focused on what the real priorities were, and that certainly helped us in terms of having a sustainable and solid foundation. But I didn't know what was going to happen in 2022. On the evening of the 11th of April 2022, I'd flown back from Johannesburg, and I was driving back home that evening, and I could see this is a very, very serious downpour. I couldn't make my way through Springside to get home. I had to take a different route, some cases driving on the verges, but I'm in a nice, strong Toyota SUV, so no problem. But of course, now we're in contact, right? So we run day shift, we run night shift. How's night shift going? Night shift operations are fine, no problem. 5:30 in the morning, we're in contact with everybody. Everything that we put in place from the 2017 flood is okay. We have no damage at all. Of course, what had happened was there was a 1 in 200 year rainfall in the inland catchment area, where we are actually here, and only 1 in 100 on the coastal belt. An hour later, we were at 1.5 meters under mud over our entire 90-hectare site. It varied a little bit, but it was dramatic. We could see from all our surveillance footage how quickly that situation unfolded. And of course, what had happened was the 1 in 200 year rainfall in the inland catchment area had filled up the dams, and the Shongweni Dam being one of the older ones. There's a whole story about who's actually responsible for that, but that's another story. But in the design of the Shongweni Dam, they have fuse gates that when the flow rate exceeds a certain level, they release. So they released, dumped the entire contents of the Shongweni Dam down the Umlazi River, 43 km later down, broke the berm of the river at the bottom, and flooded the entire South Basin. So what we had was this clay-like substance from the dam in our plant, in our machinery, over all our pits, conveyors. You can imagine the extent of that damage. So you can see how, as it broke that berm, that of course had not been maintained, took the natural route. It didn't go down the canal, which was there to divert the river, the natural route of where the river actually originally flowed, straight through the South Basin. You can imagine the old airport environment, and that's where you might have remembered seeing containers floating on the water. That was what transpired. So I just want to show you a very short video that we took, which I think just tells you a little bit about how everyone inside Toyota felt and how we coped with the experience. So I'm just going to show that briefly.
The water level started rising.
In a matter of about 45 minutes, we went from a situation of all good to run to being waist deep in mud and water.
We tried to get through to the plant because we knew we had people on site. What can we do to assist them here? We couldn't get in.
We had no telephone lines, we had no reception.
What I saw from the air, I realized that we're in trouble.
At that moment, nobody had a job.
So when the call was made to close the plant, at that stage in the morning, we already had quite a lot of people on site. So obviously everybody got the message and we started evacuating the north side. But based on the rapid rise of the water, obviously there was a real fear of electrocution of our people. So the safety was key concern for us. So the first thing I had to do was to cut power to the total site. Then obviously we started going through the plant, wading waist deep in water and mud, to go and make sure that all the people managed to at least get to higher ground or to a safe area. We evacuated people to the comm center, Then from there, throughout the day, when the community started arriving with some assistance, we had boats running up and down the plant. We had rescue swimmers that came in. So we managed to then obviously start evacuating the people by boat.
All areas across Durban have been affected quite significantly near the areas of Umlazi on the north. You've had areas like Mploti on the south. You've got Amanzimtoti.
At this stage, we completely isolated from Durban. We were unable to get through, obviously with what's happening in the section. We've had a major section of the N2 freeway near Mkomazi.
Got here very, very early on the 13th in the morning, and I'll be quite honest with you, I wanted to cry. We had no electricity, we had no water, although that sounds a little bit bizarre, and we had no communication. The N2 highway was closed, it had containers littered all over it, and at that stage, I still couldn't really determine the damage on our site, and I just thought, whew, we got a job ahead of us.
All we saw was a mess. We couldn't imagine anything else. It was a pure mess. It was this thick sludge mud that we were basically skid skating on because it was so slippery. Our first reaction to the flood was to actually find out how our people were.
True to the Toyota principles, first priority is people. So our first was to confirm the status of our members. So each and every one of us, supervision, management, we had to physically, of course with the support from HR, physically call and understand each member's situation.
On the morning of the 13th, we got to the driest space we could, which was the actual communication center. And we initially set up a command center. So between Dave Finch and his manufacturing team, my team, who was responsible for all the projects and project management and production control, we set up an infrastructure that would cope with how to manage this process. And in that facility upstairs, we just set up a process that we could set purchasing up, we could set HR up, and we could start understanding the impact of our people. So HR could report on our people on a daily basis, we could understand our supply base, we could understand our customers and any other people that had issues, and then of course the communities around us. So we fed all that information into the command center that we'd set up. And we managed that on a daily basis with 2 meetings, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, where people reported on their progress.
I can tell you in the beginning, it was just motivating the people. My job was there to motivate the people and to set small milestones. This was such a big task that we had. We didn't know how to navigate it, to be honest with you. The end goal was too big. It was too vast, and we had no real idea on how we were going to get through it. But by setting small milestones and celebrating those small milestones, for example, when we cleared the car park of mud, we celebrated that.
So from a cleanup point, it took a long time because it was a lot of mud. It was everywhere. And then obviously the one thing that we battled with was water to take the mud out. Even as general managers, as senior managers, we were on the shop floor with our squeegees, our mops, our brooms, and we were basically cleaning it up.
Toyota South Africa is very lucky to belong to a Toyota global family. So we got a lot of support from our head office in Japan.
Nobody ever asked me, why did it happen, or could it have been prevented? All they said was, how can we help?
They sent over their best. We got their best soldiers. And anything that we needed, any type of expertise that we needed, depending on each shop's specific requirements, they didn't hesitate to send them out. And they really also helped us because they've also had disasters, right? And they gave us a lot of guidance on some of the thinking way on how to get through this. So they were instrumental in being that real strong support mechanism to get us through.
I think if we never had that, we wouldn't have got out of the starting blocks. I think it's just been that constant support of spare parts, that constant support of facility management and how to get us, and just that moral support has helped us tremendously to get out of it.
We also got a lot of support from our partners in terms of some suppliers were actually saying, look, we want to send people to support to rebuild.
So as we started to power up the plant and starting to get the plant running, one of the things that we looked at is what do we need to do differently in case something like this ever happens again. And we know the one impact we had was all our AVI panels, our control panels. So from a maintenance point, we've now started looking at how to pick these equipments up off the floor. If we can start to do things differently, if, God forbid, this ever happens again, we could actually start it much sooner.
And I'm just thinking, we've had COVID, we've had the riots, now we have the floods. And Toyota South Africa has always been able to save the jobs.
And if I look at the results now, our performance on quality and productivity are much, much better than we were before. And I'm really pleased that that emphasis of taking a tough situation, creating a silver lining and making it better than before with the people really has shone through. And I think our foundation is a lot stronger than it was pre-flood.
I think it's made everyone stronger. It's made everyone learn how to deal with these catastrophes. And also the youth, the younger team have also learned along the way of how to deal with these things for the future. And I think that's important to understand that. So when there's future management, there's future issues like this going forward, they can at least understand how we dealt with it in this stage and how the next generation will deal with it going forward.
This was definitely one of the biggest. The chief officer in Toyota globally for crisis and disaster recovery confirmed that our situation was the most severe they've ever seen anywhere in the world. And to our knowledge, it was the biggest insurance claim on the continent of Africa. Our recovery was a miracle. It was absolutely remarkable. I remember 3 weeks after the flood had hit us, walking through our plant, went through one of the shops, and it had been cleaned up, the floors had been cleaned up, and I did a circular route coming back. An hour later, it was full of mud again. Because there was mud outside, there was mud inside, and I thought, how are we going to do this? Had no idea. But the support was incredible. And sitting one night with Cindy in bed, said, I've got to come up with a theme for our recovery. And so we came up with this theme, Rebuilding Better Together. And fortunately, on the night, that very same day of the disaster, I announced we would rebuild. Quickly got the word out. And of course, there were some rumors, but that was never, ever in question, because I knew that if we were to relocate or have to set up a new operation, it would take us a minimum of 4 years, and we wouldn't survive that. We'd be able to continue selling cars, but at a fraction of the volume, and our entire production base would have dissipated. In fact, many of my colleagues in the other brands said if this had happened to them, they'd have closed shop. So it was a real miracle. We knew that we needed everyone to support us. This needed to be a joint, collaborative approach. We had experts, as you heard, from Japan. We had suppliers sending people. We had our employees, of course, doing a lot of work. We needed to think about how we'd rebuild and how we could use the opportunity to be better than before. It was a remarkable situation. We had no power, no ablutions, no fresh water, no cell phone communication. All our offices at ground level were destroyed, all our computer systems, no network. It was a real challenge. So we brought in water containers that circulated, cleaning, sucking out. We brought in 77 generators. I couldn't have people. We had over 2,000 people a day working on the site. So we needed ablutions. We needed to create our own infrastructure to be able to transition this and make sure we could work together. And we used that opportunity. We said straight off, our people are the most important. Contacted everyone, as you heard in the video, found out what their situation was. There were some damaged homes. We supported them. We went out in the community. We provided water. We rented water tankers. we provided food parcels, we provided clothing packages. So it was a real community-driven approach to the recovery. And we kept saying, how are we going to use this to find the silver lining? And we involved all our employees in each of their processes that were working to say, okay, we now have the opportunity. How can this be better? How can we make it better? However, if we ordered all the replacement equipment, we would have had to wait for 2 years. Couldn't do that. So we needed to repair. Many of my colleagues in Japan said that's absolutely impossible. We took those control panels apart, distilled water, toothbrushes, over and over at about a 30% success rate until we got it right. Sent out all the motors. For example, we had over 2,000 motors for repair. We had about a 30% failure, sent them out again. It was the only way we would recover. We ordered just under 100,000 pieces of equipment from all over the world. And many of it couldn't arrive in time, but we installed as fast as we could and looked at every area to say, where is the silver lining in this? So it was a tremendous experience for us as a company. One of the, I think, best things that anybody can say to a leadership team is, your organization's changed. And we got that comment 2 years after the flood recovery from numerous people. But it changed in so many positive ways. It created a more unified, more dynamic team, much faster adaptation, a lot more collaboration across all the different departments. I would never have been able to achieve that as a leader. It was something that needed to happen to us as a company. The last thing we'd do is wish for a flood disaster like this. But when I look back, I know now in 2026, we would not be where we are if we had not had that magnitude of change throughout the organization. And it's made a remarkable difference to how we work together, our ability to compete, and how fast we are moving. And so it's something that, of course, I could never have scripted. There's a lot of leadership lessons for us. And just to tell perhaps a few stories, you know, one of the, I'm sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. Yeah, I think just, you know, responding very, very quickly right in the beginning, making that very decisive decision, even though I didn't know how we were going to rebuild, making sure that we really managed our reputation. You might recall, we went onto TV, not a very polished TV commercial, but we said, this has happened to us, please be patient with us. We went onto TV again when we had finished, and he said, we're back. Thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for sticking it out with us. So it was a very transparent set of communications. We engaged with people to come and visit. It happened a little bit by chance. We had a dealer group that came and visited us, and I was concerned. They're going to lose confidence in us. They're going to see that I can't give them an exact time frame. Is this really good for our dealer network to see what we're going through? And exactly the opposite happened. They said, Andrew, there's a huge disaster. Don't worry about us. But how can we help? Can we send you technicians? Can we send you people? You know, and that then led us to inviting more groups to come and see what we're doing, sharing transparently. Of course, we had virtual conferences every week, updating everyone. And so we became a lot more open, a lot more transparent. We invited local government, provincial, national government. We needed a lot of support from national government because isolate ships are arriving with parts, ships are arriving with cars, and I was producing nothing. So massive cash flow challenges. And we got the support over time. So it was an important lesson for us about how we showed up as leaders. And just one last story. Of course, we had a lot of planning, but we have a set of principles in Toyota around making sure that we go to the place of work to understand the exact situation and support, coach, and unlock any situations. So these were an approach where you're not sitting in a boardroom or behind a computer or in a meeting trying to solve problems. You actually go to the spot, and that had an enormous impact. Went out on the shop floor, found out from each team what they were doing. They presented back to us, how can we help, gave them a bit of direction, and did that 24/7. And it made an enormous difference. It really got everyone to feel a lot more ownership. especially our hourly workers who are on the production line suddenly understood we don't need them, they need us. And the way we went through paying everybody and keeping everybody employed made an enormous difference, I think, to the morale and the way everyone engaged with us as a company. And one of the decisive decisions I needed to take was to pay for the shortfall in insurance for all those vehicles that were damaged by the flood. You'll have seen viral videos about how Toyotas can be submerged in water. That's true. But they can't be submerged in mud for 8 to 12 hours. That has the potential to get into the small wiring harnesses. And of course, even though if we repair them, we didn't know 6, 12 months if something would happen and there could be some safety incident. And I didn't want a situation where a crash or an incident was blamed on a flood-recovered vehicle. So we just made the decision, we're going to purchase all of them. We purchased all of the flood-damaged vehicles from the dealers, all of our vehicles, and we crushed 3,500 what looked like perfect vehicles. Imported luxury vehicles, our own production vehicles, everything. So I could go out and say publicly, there are no flood-damaged vehicles, right? It was those type of things that I think made an enormous difference to teaching us about how to make quick decisions, make sure that our priorities are correct, and just driving a sense of resilience and purpose. Even if we didn't know what tomorrow was going to hold, we knew what our priorities were today. This is, again, just about how much we've changed as a company. And so God has a big picture. To get us to this point, obviously, right from when God told me I'm not in charge, kept reminding me. And I think the spiritual lesson around, we know that when we have adversity, when we go through difficult times, that God has a purpose to strengthen our character, to refine our self-discipline, to strengthen our holiness, and becoming more like Him. And of course, this translated into our work environment at the same time. And so just talking here this morning reminds me of how much I need to actually embrace what can be seen as a setback, what can be seen as a tragedy, because there's a much bigger picture in mind that I could never have dreamed of. It's not over. I'm not forecasting another flood disaster. But in the next 5 to 10 years, the outlook for the automotive industry and for Toyota South Africa is bleak. We have some massive challenges, global disruptions around the world, global disruptions in South Africa. But I know God's in charge. I know He has a bigger picture. It's probably going to take a lot of work, but I need to be on my knees, seeking guidance, listening to His voice, and knowing that I might not be able to see all of what He had planned, but know that His purpose is perfect. And I think it's just been encouraging for me to prepare for this and remind myself again. I have a joke amongst my colleagues at work. I said, I'm praying for a boring year. He hasn't answered that prayer yet. Thank you very much for listening.
The story behind the story behind the story. When we see the profile, it all just looks like it's smooth sailing and 1 month of success into the next month of success. But it's a reminder also that that the Lord doesn't promise us as Christian people in business a smooth road. We all like to quote that scripture to say God goes ahead of us and makes the road straight for us, right? So I want to ask everybody to give Cindy a massive round of applause. This is, I can only imagine the strength that you must have brought in those moments. So, Cindy, we celebrate you in this as well. I think for all of us, a massive lesson in business culture leadership of people first, then community, and then operations. And I would imagine that anybody here that right now is not driving a Toyota has suddenly got that up. So you don't need to do as much marketing in the upper highway area after this talk anymore. So Andrew, I want to ask you as a person of faith that has a very busy schedule, lots of demands, you don't only have your day-to-day responsibilities, as I mentioned earlier, you're also a CEO sponsor. And last year you were playing a role on the task force. So we've got 24 hours a day. You exercise. Family, I know, is very, very important to you. How do you manage your own personal quiet time with the Lord? How have you set up a schedule for yourself that, I know it's different for each of us, but I'm really interested to know your own routine and rhythm to make sure that you can get to everything that's important and still remain connected with God.
I wasn't planning to say this, but I'll share with you a very personal journey that took place over a few years. I ended up in a situation where I'd wake up in the morning and didn't have the energy to go and exercise. So God forced me to be on my knees in a quiet time. Then I would exercise after that. And obviously I didn't listen because he just made that happen. So what I try and do is get up early in the morning. There's the times when I've got a clear mind, spend time with God, and read scripture, pray, and really try and listen to Him in terms of the things that I need to tackle. And a lot of the thoughts and concepts that I have don't necessarily come from reading business books, but it comes from that time in the morning. And then I try and exercise every morning. It's just been important for me to have the energy to be able to cope with my day. I go through to work, and in the evenings I've tried to, obviously spending time with Cindy. I phone her we have about a 45-minute drive back from work, and I'm normally on the phone with her the whole time. So it really helps just to unwind a little bit. And spend time in the evenings. And more recently, very recently, I'm trying to read rather than watch television at night.
I think we've all gone through that journey. It can easily steal a lot more time than what we want to give it, but it's so easy to give ourselves to it, right? And I know the evening when we chatted in preparation for this, I was curious to know your experience of dealing directly with the President of South Africa. So in some of the roles that you're in, you are engaging at very senior levels in government. What's your personal experience of dealing into that level of authority and seniority? And do you ever get we're human, do you ever get nervous talking to President Ramaphosa?
Yeah, in the beginning I did. He's an imposing person, and he certainly asks very sharp questions. My first interactions with him started in around 2018, 2019, where we developed a master plan for the automotive sector. And then more recently, quite a lot. He's a charming person, right? And he has a lot of presence. He's very engaging. He's highly intelligent, and he remembers what you've said before. And he asks probing questions. So my interactions have been very good with him. Yes, I get nervous, and obviously it's important. I need to respect that level of authority and prepare adequately, for it. But in many ways, easier to talk to him than some of the ministers. I'll leave it there.
Moving on to electric vehicles. So
I'm talking about government ministers, eh?
Don't worry, Steve's called a pastor, not a minister.
Exactly.
So just an industry question. We are seeing electric vehicles, we're seeing hybrid vehicles. We know that electricity in South Africa has got a long way to go in terms of being affordable and sustainable. But what is your expected outlook over the next 5 to 10 years for that changeover to happen for the South African market into electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles?
Yeah, obviously a complicated topic. Let me just try and frame it this way. So one can look at the transition to what we refer to as new energy vehicles, all of those drivetrains that incorporate hybrids, plug-in hybrids, range extenders, battery electrics, fuel cell electric, hydrogen ICE, and carbon neutral fuel. But the important part is making sure as a country that we manufacture those vehicles and create the value, and we don't become an import replacement market, because we'd lose jobs, lose skill. Obviously, it'd have a big impact on the foreign exchange in South Africa and our trade balance. And so the transition needs to be balanced. As a manufacturing footprint for the country, 68% of our total volume is exported. 81% of that to Europe and the UK. They've gone ahead of us in terms of putting regulations in place to decarbonize and slowly improve the ratio of zero-emission vehicles to vehicles that do emit. UK is slightly different to Europe, but by 2035, majority of internal combustion vehicles will be banned. So how do we transition from a manufacturing base so we can sustain that export volume? At the same time, it's very difficult to do that if we don't have a market in South Africa that's transitioning. And that's been the very deep discussion we're having with the South African government at the moment. What's also happening with battery electric vehicles as kind of the pinnacle of zero-emission vehicles is there were a lot of forecasts around how that costs would come down to where we'd have cost parity with internal combustion engines. And a lot of smart people all over the world have been predicting various dates by when that would happen. None of that has materialized. I remember in 2019, Bloomberg made a very bold statement to say 2025, battery electric vehicles would be the same price as an internal combustion engine. And of course, we know that's not true. However, what's changed the dynamic is the Chinese production. So China produces 32 million out of just under 90 million vehicles globally. So by far the biggest player. And they've now got excess capacity. They have very strong government support structures. And of course, they're looking for markets where they can now export those vehicles, and South Africa is one of them. So they're now trying to bring in those new energy vehicles, plug-in hybrids, battery electric vehicles at a lot more affordable price. Last year, we were 2.8% of all vehicles sold were new energy vehicles, which is nothing. As Toyota, Lexus, we were 58% of that volume. So we're by far the leaders in the transition to new energy vehicles. We just launched a Toyota battery electric vehicle 3 weeks ago. In February, we launched a Lexus battery electric vehicle, and we'll launch another 3 this year. So, yes, the transition is very important, but obviously charging stations and the cost of those is going to be critical. I want to say, though, our approach is that every customer's usage and the type of vehicle needs to have the drivetrain that's appropriate for how they use their vehicles. I don't see a world where everyone will be driving battery electric vehicles. So we have what we call a multi-pathway approach, which says we need to customize and listen to the needs of each customer. And some customers, how they use the vehicle, the type of vehicle, a hybrid might be a lot better from a cost of ownership point of view. Some customers, a battery electric might be better. It's difficult to predict how these technology step changes are going to happen, but we do know over time the cost of batteries will become more affordable. So I want to give you an example. We've just launched a RAV4 plug-in hybrid. It's got a zero-emission driving range of 146 kilometers. So for South Africans, you could commute to work every day, zero emissions. If you want to go away on holiday, you've got a 900-kilometer range vehicle. So there's a lot of practical elements to these drivetrains that we have to take account for. What are the farmers going to do? What would they like to use? What is the more commercial customers that transport goods or furniture? What type of vehicles do they want? What are the private customers going to want to do in their cities? What will the two-car family look like? So these are complex issues, but I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a dramatic increase in the number of new energy vehicles and even battery electric vehicles. And I just want to make one comment. We were the first to launch mass production hybrid in South Africa with the Corolla Cross. If I could just bring that cost down between the hybrid and the internal combustion engine, I'm 100% convinced I'd build 100% hybrid. Because everybody that drives the car would prefer a hybrid. It only comes down to affordability.
If I can ask the team just to pick up the roaming microphones, we're going to head over to the open floor question section. And then just as you're talking about how the Chinese market has got excess that they're producing and producing at a good cost, thinking of what you mentioned in your sharing of how the Lord has prepared you guys for what's coming. Around changes, around challenges, around big things that are moving, and how your team right now is better positioned than what it ever would have been without the flood and the rebuilding. So it's an incredible testimony of understanding the hand of God behind the bigger things in our lives. So we've got our first question. We can't see much with the lights here. So Roma over here. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Andrew. That was outstanding. Thank you. Very moving. I just wanted to ask a question. Could you give us some feedback on the risk, the health risk on electric vehicles? Is there anything substantial? You read all of these reports.
The health risk?
Yes, in terms of supposedly so bad to drive inside an electric vehicle.
No.
The EMFs, no?
No, there's no health risk. Okay. It's quiet, there's no vibration, there's less fatigue on the driver. Of course, you don't maybe have the excitement of the performance engine, but from a purely I'm an engineer. From a purely engineering point of view, it's actually a better drivetrain. But it doesn't make sense in all circumstances, and it's very expensive at the moment. So it needs to make sense in the bigger scheme of things. There's a hand on there.
We've got a question over here.
Yes. Hello, Andrew. My name is Peter. How does Toyota plan on using AI responsibly? You look at Ford with their recently implemented Latitude AI. How do you guys plan to compete with that without replacing jobs for the Toyota team?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I think we're rolling out quite an aggressive approach to being smarter with AI. And we also know that AI will create some value in areas where we're currently not that efficient. Do we have a complete framework of how we're going to use it in the company? It's still being developed. We have a lot of AI tools that we're using, but we also need to manage the confidentiality of the information. So a lot of it needs to be an in-house approach where the database is retained within our company structure. On other times, we encourage people to use it just to be smarter and more efficient. When it comes to production and the vehicle, of course, that's another whole discussion, but there are opportunities for AI, especially in quality control, to simplify how we can pick up errors. There's roughly 4,000 parts in a vehicle. I produce 456 variants. So you can imagine the complexity and how AI can help us to understand and pick up ahead of time where there might be some opportunities for better quality control. And from a production point of view, we're already using it. So we have a highly automated plant. We use AI to also predict some of our maintenance requirements. And obviously in the robotics and automation, AI is involved in that. So is it going to replace some jobs? Yes, I think it could, but I think it's also going to establish some other jobs at the same time. So it's important that we just think about how we manage that transition.
Got a hand over here, Tim.
Mr. Kirby, thank you very much. My name's Suzanne. I know that we're in a multicultural society. I'm Afrikaans. My husband is a South African German. I have an Indian friend next to me. There's so many people in this room. You lived in Japan for 2.5 years. And what I want to know, I saw this lean principle there, is how did Japan influence you, not only as a business leader, but also as a Christian? And what can we learn from the Japanese?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and Cindy and I often talk about it. The first thing that comes to mind is they have a deep cultural understanding that how they live their lives needs to be considerate of others as the first priority. So often foreigners would look at the country and say they are simply robots following all the rules to the nth degree. And as South Africans, we like to be loose and free and challenge the rules. But the basis for why they conform is a real deep respect for each other. And whilst we might say we have Ubuntu in South Africa, it's not really true. So if you get into a lift, there's a protocol that makes it convenient for everyone. If you're coming to a pedestrian crossing, they are extremely considerate. Yes, they end up being very law-abiding as well. And I think there's a lot we can learn from Japanese society in that way. Because a lot of crime, a lot of situations where South Africans overstep the mark is actually a lack of respect for the other person. Yes, they might be wanting to gain personally, but you're doing it at the expense of somebody else. And when they came out of the war in 1945, they were devastated to such a large degree that they built up this very strong work ethic, very strong respect for each other, very strong approach to say, actually, the community is more important than me as an individual. And I think there's a lot we can learn from that, because I think those principles are well articulated in Scripture at the same time. On the other hand, there are a lot of theater principles that we share, that we drive around lean operations. But of course, perhaps we don't have time to go into that in detail. But a lot of it is around making sure that you don't have your head in the clouds. You are on the ground, understanding what's happening, and understand actually we're a people organization, not a company that makes and sells cars.
Very good, very good. We've got some more hands here. We are coming in close to the end of our time together, so at this stage we're going to take one more question, and if there is time for another one, we'll do one more after that. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Kirby. Thank you for your talk. I retired last year from an automotive byproduct supplier here in New Germany, and I'm quite aware that South Africa used to be the top exporter and car manufacturer in Africa, but that has subsequently changed, and Morocco is now the biggest car manufacturer and exporter. Is Toyota and its other manufacturers working together with the government to try and get South Africa back to the top of this situation and improve our economy?
Absolutely. So it's been a deep discussion for the last 18 months. In fact, it's reaching a little bit of a crescendo at the moment, where as a sector we have been discussing amongst ourselves to have a singular one voice proposal on how we can strengthen our manufacturing competitiveness, how we can strengthen our competitiveness into Africa as well as into the other export markets around the world. And how do we do that in a way where it's not fiscally demanding? So we can't be asking for more incentives, but there are some smart ways in which we can restructure a number of levers that can just improve the balance a little bit. And for us to be competitive exporting, we also need to improve the mix of vehicles that are sold in South Africa. So we don't become a country that says, well, we'll export, but in South Africa, we'll only import. That's never going to work. It's not sustainable. So yes, we're in deep discussions on this, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll find a breakthrough.
Thank you. Just to make sure that we can honor our commitment on time, we are going to bring the formal part of this morning to a close. Andrew is going to be available for the next half an hour after we close for any individual questions or conversations, and some of the questions here on the hands that were up on this side that didn't get a chance to ask it. So please feel free to come and chat to Andrew afterwards. For those of you, let's stand for a moment. For those of you that are comfortable, I just want to say thank you to God and bless Andrew and Cindy with a prayer as we close off this morning. Lord, what a reminder this morning that you are in control of all things, Lord, and a reminder to each of us that we are not in charge, Lord, but you are ultimately in charge. Thank you for Andrew's character, Lord, for his life, for his testimony, for as he leads, Lord, that it points to you. It points to your heart, and it points to your love for people, Lord. Thank you for his family, for Cindy, for the children. And we just pray, Lord, that the impact that their lives have on their immediate community, in fact, on a national level and an international level, Lord, that your hand will be upon them, Lord, and that you would carry on guiding them with wisdom, with life, Lord, and ultimately, it's all for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I trust you enjoyed the morning with us, and off to work most of us go. There we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Well done, Alex.